nothing on this mic. It's completely almost dead. Oh. All right, give me something again.
You got something?
Yeah, there we go. If I don't yell, I think, oh yeah, no, we got a perfect balance.
Okay.
Well, there's no start-stop. We're on a continuous record from Cool Edit Pro. I can dice and slice it any way you like. If you want to start and stop, what we do is basically clap our hands 3 times or let me know. That way I can mark it on the page and I have a visual reference.
Okay, well, go ahead and you can go ahead and start whatever questions you have.
You bet. Okay. Thank you for showing up today. This is Beware Mouse. On the line we have...
Hi, I'm Greg, and I am a special investigator with SIS Systems. That's Sierra, India Sierra Systems. That stands for Security, Investigations, and Safety Systems, and we do research and we're gathering data currently on extraterrestrial ET and extraterrestrial biological entities, EBs, and UFO encounters for collecting data for research.
Okay, you had me on a lot of that, but then you used a word that, a lot of people will shy away from. How has this progressed from being simply referred to as a UFO to all these other titles that we're using now? Do we have something that would validate, the move in our vocabulary?
That's interesting. Several years ago, most all this research, the current quote-unquote modern textbooks of research come out from the 1940s, of course, 1945, the famous Truman incidences and all that. But over
Condon
the years,
Report.
What's that?
Condon Report.
Right. Among a lot of other information, there's the supposed treaties that were signed between the humans, the United Nations, and the ARCs, as they're called, Alien Race Councils. But all of that stuff is documented well within the government. You have Majestic 12, Magic 12, Operation Blue Book. You have OPNAC, and all these various, very well documented, actual, official, formal government programs. And so what we are doing now, we work for a private source, a private entity, and we are collecting data from individuals who have had encounters, either direct or indirect, with the UFOs and the EBs.
Okay. When you say about the treaties, now I've heard rumors of that. Some of them fall in the 70s, but what's interesting about it, wouldn't that be like the American Indian actually coming up with a document for the pilgrims in order to sign? If we were signing treaties with them, isn't that completely backwards in the presentation?
That's a great point, and a lot of people have argued that point, but supposedly we did several treaties. There's one, in how you pronounce them, the Greada Treaty, the Shamu Treaty, and just different things. But, there's different points of view on that, but I can understand your point.
Yeah, after all, the conquest belonged to the person that had the wrong rifle and not the arrow. So where does the treaty
Correct.
belong there? You see what I'm saying? And when
Absolutely.
we approach something that is obviously so advanced, okay, and the only thing that we're asking all this time, presumably, is weapons first. And the first question they would have is, weapons against who? Who could possibly fight you? Well, we fight among ourselves too much.
Exactly.
What kind of an answer
Correct.
is that?
And one of the big issues that came out from the treaties, supposedly the government documents, is the metadata collection, which basically allowed the ARCs, Alien Race Councils, the ARCs as they're called, to supposedly take so many humans a year, experiment on them, test them, do whatever they want to gather up metadata on on humans, studying genetics, et cetera, et cetera. So and it depends on what source you're looking at.
Here's a question, and I got this actually from one of our listeners from our teaser we did. What is the value of, well, actually, let me rephrase that. It would be better probably in order to go to orientation. How do we know that we have multiple species? I mean, we have millions of species on the planet Earth. I don't know exactly where that number would fall, but I think that we're still in the millions, even just trying to get out of how many different types of insects there are. And then we have an additional 2/3 of the Earth that we haven't even been able to look at, creatures down there that surprised us that would have ambient pressure. Oh, well, the pressure would tear them apart. Why? They're pressurized with everything else. So there's a lot of different questions, but how could we establish the fact? What would be the procedure to establish a fact that we have an intelligent reptilian that we're even discussing or even considering, that we're giving these two titles, an intelligence and a reptilian? Do we have anything that would actually suggest that there are other races rather than our own government just messing with us?
You know, again, one of the things I do like about your investigative technique is you do ask some very, very interesting questions that a lot of people don't ask or won't ask. But, you know, there's supposedly, to answer that question, supposedly we have, you know, and there are a lot of things, please understand, I'm not being evasive, it's just the research and data collection is going on, so a lot of stuff we can't discuss and we can't release. But there's categories. There's ways to categorize a sentient. And you understand, sentient being is, you know, an intelligent being, the one that has self-awareness and can interact with others. And so there's ways in which the categories in which we can do sentient being research, and we can categorize them. And of course, one of the basics is, can you have a meaningful, useful interaction, intellectual conversation? And then that's how they do it. And what you're talking about is the reptilians. The reptilians are considered one of the alien races.
Okay, now in our previous one that we lost some of our data, we were kind of approaching some of the sources of where this documentation is actually being found. One of the things that convinces me that there is such a thing is the representation of a gargoyle along with the ancient text within the Catholic religion showing dragon-like features that would be normally considered Chinese in nature, and extremely short-winged dragons. Now, the lore goes further to say that if a dragon has a tail, then that is royalty. Now, do we have any photographic evidence? Do we have anything that would show that this creature has been on the planet longer than the alligator?
You know, we do. And a lot of paleontologists who study, of course, the fossils of dinosaurs, a lot of these individuals and anthropologists who study, you know, ancient civilizations and cultures, they, you know, these fossil do exist. China has a bunch of them, and you are correct. One of the most important things is that the universal or the global representations, every culture has the exact same story, exact same reputations of these quote-unquote alien ancient astronauts, you know, beings that come from space. The ancient Sumer, which was the first documented society on Earth with the first written law, the first written rules, and the first history of Earth, the first documented appearance of quote-unquote humans, man on Earth, and yet they have this massive multi-thousand-page history of Earth. But the interesting point is they actually called it those who from the heavens fell to Earth, and they actually have representations of them, but they appear globally. So whatever your views and
regardless of
are,
what they called, the description remains the same over and over again. Just simply the language or the name of the creature is being changed.
Correct, and that's what I was about to say. Regardless of your points of views or beliefs, every single known culture has the exact same story. So these things, whatever they are, we can label them multiple different things, appear to every single culture, and under very strong evidence, they still are today.
I'd like to throw something in there that actually confirms what you're saying. And it's just a blip that I heard about 10 years ago. There was a African tribe that had zero contact with anybody. they were still using traditional medicines, and the reason why I found out about them is because the Catholic Church went in there and forced them to give up all of their natural medicines in order to substitute with whatever claim that is, to use FDA approved whatever. And in this battle of traditional medicine, the medicine companies were also looking for these same herbs and stuff. So they were trying to not only convince them not to use it anymore, but then also to steal that information. The problem occurred is the fact that within that was the history of the tribe. And when I looked in the history of the tribe, their story of creation, their story of God, their story of whatever it is they feel is strongest about is identical. The only thing you have to do is just pull the names out, and literally it's an overlay to 90% of the religions on the planet.
Yep. Have you ever heard of Joseph Campbell? He was one of the great philosophical mystics. He wrote a fantastic book called The Power of Myth. And basically what he talks about is the hero journey, the epic journey, the basic foundational cultural views are the same in societies separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years. And so we see the same things reoccurring repeatedly, and again, the evidence is indicating that they are still in modern time. Here we are in October 2018, and this stuff is still occurring. People are still having the same exact encounters.
It's kind of amazing the fact that any of this has been hidden. How can you? Well, actually, I have the answer to that. The only way in order to do it is the fact that we only have a 30 to 50 year lifespan. Anyone making it past that, especially in these years, is extremely ancient. So the fact is, when these people die, their living history dies with them, and the interpretation that's left is the only thing is written, and then it is only written within their understanding of science at that time.
Right. You can only operate on the levels that you know, which is why education and experience is so incredibly valuable, because it expands your ability to communicate and relate experience and data and information.
Now, there's one of the things that I find recurring is globes throughout history. As a matter of fact, one of the most famous Knights Templar that I use for a legal argument in order to prove the existence of or non-existence of God in court. It's a practice drama exercise that you do when you're a law student. Anyway, we have a successful one using the Knights Templar, but at the end of Christopher Columbus's trials at sea, he had guiding lights pulling him into shore. And it's actually mentioned in the captain's log. Do we have other instances other than something so obvious that we can also pull time and time again out of these captain's logs?
Well, what we have is you have what you're talking about, the guiding orbs, the guiding lights. There are literally thousands of stories, especially in the age of aviation and technology. There are stories that have come out from World War I. Now, remember, historical context, World War I was 1914 to 1918, and it's when we really exploded the use of aviation technology. And from the time we started using aviation technology, there's actual stories of those orbs and stuff. Charles Lindbergh, of course, one of the most famous aviators in the world, flew the famous flight across the Atlantic, and he flew from of course, from New York, and then he landed in Europe. And he actually talked about seeing some of these orbs dancing around the plane. One of the other most famous cases was John Glenn, who went up, of course, and he's a Mercury astronaut. He was the first American to, Alan Shepard's first American in orbit. In space. John Glenn was first to orbit the Earth, and he talked about the same thing. Seeing the orbs dance around the aircraft, seeing the orbs do these things. And so they're obviously there, and there are multiple stories of them.
But there's 3 or 4 different stories in essence. One is a plasma ball, another is a dark spot of light that people can't seem to focus on because their eyes just kind of blend off of it. And the third is a highly polished sphere, which we have all the way through history, including in several ancient 1600 paintings.
Right. Well, you mentioned the painting. It's funny because there's over 1,000 paintings coming out of medieval all the way through Renaissance Europe that actually show UFOs, quote unquote, aliens in the paintings. And there's a very famous book. It's one of the oldest books known to exist.
There's a tapestry. Is that the one you're referring to over London, where there's these barbells and stuff like that, and stars in the sky with 16 points and people running for cover?
Multiple paintings that span about 500 years of European painting. But one of the oldest books in the world comes from Wales, and it's in the Welsh Library. There's 4 or 5 books in there that are considered to be extremely ancient from that geographic region, and there's clear drawings of gray aliens, gray EBs in those books. So, something is there. And our purpose at SIS is we go out and we investigate these encounters, and we investigate this, any aspect of it.
Okay, for someone that might be catching up on this, we have SIS. It's Greg, correct?
Yes, special agent, special investigator, depends on what you want to call it, but we call ourselves special investigators. For some reason, we've got the label special agents. We're not special agents, we're special investigators. My name is Gregory, my partner's name is Amanda, and we actually work for SIS Systems, and we investigate UFOs and EV encounters.
Now, obviously, you didn't just decide yesterday in order to start doing this, and you've actually progressed quite a far. The question I have then was, when was your first peaked, and when would you start first looking at this, and what difference do you think that it would make if we had these secrets all along? Wouldn't our lives pretty much be the same, just simply getting into work, doing our job, getting home, and feeding? I mean, would there anything be drastically changed, and if so, for who?
Yeah, that's a great question. Basically, we'll start with the first part there. It really depends on your own personal point of view. It depends on how you personally would view the technology and the information. And there's a lot of stuff we can't discuss and won't discuss, but for whatever reason, a lot of this information, a lot of this data is in fact controlled. The organizations, entities that control it do not want people to know it for whatever reason. Our primary focus is we investigate to see how this has a psychological and an emotional impact, and how people are changed psychologically and emotionally after having these encounters, because there's clearly psychology involved in this, and there's clearly
so what you're doing basically is a social audit on where we currently stand with what information. How is this information going to be used? Is this going to be just simply presented back to the public, or do you think that there's a administration that would be interested in the social engineering of how to introduce this and properly introduce it to the public?
That's, again, a great question. And the truth is, from our point of view at SIS, we don't know. A private organization, a private entity has requested that we do this research and gather this data, so we are, and we write up the reports and we do the information. And the stated purpose of it is to help individuals who have suffered from psychological and or emotional problems and had an altered mental state after having these encounters, because we do know that people's perceptions, their perspective, their mental state, their mental status does in fact change. So the research is trying to decide and determine what caused that change, where was that change, and why. For example, you can have 10 people that are very similar, they have the same experience, but you have 10 different outcomes. So that's all very, very important stuff. Now, how it's going to be released, or to who and when and where, we have no idea. It is designed to try to help people and gather information that will be useful and helpful.
Right. Now, here's a question. Is there any specific rare event that you would be seeking to have some type of a witness too that is difficult, but it is such a unique event that you can verify just simply by what little information you do not share. It's a way of verifying an event. So is there specific events that you would consider the gold mine if you actually was able to locate? What is the gold mine perspective for you?
That's a great question. The gold mine perspective, I think, would be, and a physical crash, an actual physical crash with actual physical bodies that became massively publicly known and experienced in modern time with modern technology, with modern abilities in the media, social media, and cyber and internet capabilities. That would be, because it would be undisputed. It would be, no one would be able to really argue with that. I mean, that would just be the way it is. So that would be incredible. We do have a lot of experiences. We have a lot of videos, a lot of pictures. We have people who have had tremendous experiences, and so we just gather that information and then we do comparisons. We try to put things in categories and compare different levels of experiences. But the gold mine would be, that undisputed, very public, very open.
But we've already had that. The problem is it was snatched up before we could actually all look at it. What evidence, obviously that would be extraordinary evidence, but what evidence, example, when I remember all these waving of the hands for all this photographic evidence that couldn't possibly be, there was a reference of stereo telescope. If there was a stereo camera that had taken the photograph, okay, is this a significant sampling method that changes the whole ball game? At what point, what threshold do we have indisputable evidence?
That's an excellent question, and that depends on the culture you're dealing with, and it also depends on the perspective of the people you're dealing with. I think anything that's there and is undisputed, yes, I think that would be incredibly important, and it would be very, very, very useful. But again, you also have to realize that the United Nations, the UN, has entire sections that deal specifically with EVs and UFOs, whose entire purpose is to create confusion and doubt. One particular program that existed for years, which was very public, was called Snowbird, and the information on Snowbird was released. And the purpose of Snowbird was to flood the media with fake and phony, proved fake and phony UFO and ET events to actually
discredit anything that's real.
What's that?
To discredit anything that could be real.
Correct. For every real one photograph, you put out 20 more, and then prove, half of them are fake and phony, and that's going to.
I've found so many documents that just by glancing, I can tell that these things are not photoshopped, or I have recognized them from other footages. Correct. Like that was broadcast Correct. In the 70s, and then Correct. They insert this absolutely ridiculous plastic toy something in the middle of it and say, and we're looking at this one really closely. Say what? What about that last photo? So, yeah, it's easy to hide because people, maybe they have a desire not to be bothered. But again, we have to go back. If it is such a secret, okay, we don't have the ability to reach past our government in order to take advantage of anything that they would offer, even with open disclosure. So exactly what secret is making the difference for the powers to be to remain secret? There's nothing there.
Exactly, and that's why we say that, although the process that we're utilizing and the program that we're doing is extremely useful, and we've already seen it benefit people, and we know that the collection of this data is extremely useful and very beneficial to people. I have said many times, and many other people in SIS, this isn't really going to become a real global issue until whoever they are, decide to make an absolute 100% public, very, very, very open, very public, presentation and exposure. Until then, our focus is gathering information to help people from a social point of view?
Actually, I may have an answer for that, but I want to ask this. The question is in quantum physics. As we look into this further and further, we're discovering the fundamental theories that we have in quantum physics, as extraordinary as they are, is being reinforced and reinforced by actual reality and laboratory operational, not theoretical, but operational equipment. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Now, could the question to my previous question, or the answer to my previous question, be then the amount of ignorance that we have collectively over the power of quantum physics, meaning the power of our brains collectively aimed at any one thing, could that be the secret that nobody can afford to release?
It could be. It could be. And there's a lot of theoretical physicists and a lot of theoretical mathematicians and astrophysicists have actually offered that up. I mean, there's an entire, as you know, an entire science of theoretical physics, theoretical math, and
well, the reason why I mentioned that is the constant representation of the snake eating its tail and the yin and yang. And if we actually thought, even for a moment, simultaneously together, any one thought, what true effect could that have? Could it be that powerful as to have whatever is, quote, overseeing us completely overthrown at that point?
No, and that's a great question. And no, I don't think it would. And the reason for that is we do have, human society now has become, in many, many areas, very dumbed down. You have people that you could show the most simplistic 2 plus 2, and they still don't understand that 2 plus 2 equals 4. In addition to that, we have a society that's been highly, highly drugged and chemicalized, if you will, by the pharmaceuticals that people take.
Well, then who is it that would be doing that? The pharmaceuticals, or by instruction by a higher order?
And that's a good point, and some people will argue both. But no, we have people now who could not handle that. We have people now who could not process it. We have, we're talking millions and millions of people who cannot understand the most simplistic and basic components of science. So
that I have to agree with. Just the simple conversation of how many dimensions do we live in, the most common answer is 3. The problem is we live in a 4 dimension. The first dimension must be time, because without time you cannot measure anything in distance from point A to point B. So we live in a 4-dimensional realm, not a 3, and I think that fundamental misrepresentations like that is the reason why we remain totally ignorant.
Well, yes, we operate in 4 dimensions. You're absolutely correct. Time, that we have height and depth and width, and so yes, that's the 4-dimensional world. But if you read some of the ancient texts, to include the ancient Bible, to include the Sumerian text, to include some of the Chinese texts, when you start reading these things, you start seeing that there's actually 12 dimensions. Many ancient cultures operated in 12 dimensions. That would explain much deeper a lot of the paranormal phenomena that goes on, because we also research and we work in the paranormal world, gathering data and information there as well.
Well, are you saying that there's 2 conspiracy, or are you saying that there's 1 conspiracy to hide the structure of our reality?
And again, that's an excellent argument. Clearly, and whether we want to use the word conspiracy or not, clearly there's very deliberate and very strong actions to prevent suppression of information, suppression of knowledge, and just on a very basic level. Very recently, I was speaking with a group of mathematicians that have master's degrees and doctorate degrees in math, and they're actually, and I can't get into it beyond what I'm about to tell you, but they've actually been asked to investigate and look very closely at the quote-unquote Common Core math.
We're not even talking Common Core. This goes back into our original math, dating less than 100 years ago when they figured out the binary code. That was an incredible thing, because the only actual place that we could use it is on an abacus, but it turned out to be the actual code that we're using today.
Correct. And the point I was about to make is you have these people who are extremely experienced with mathematics, and the point I was getting at is talking about the dumbing down. They're talking about the Common Core math, because we're talking about conspiracies. Common Core math is so outrageous.
No, that's nonsensical. It's a way of creating an artificial Rube Goldberg machine that you create in your head, and without satisfying that Rube Goldberg machine, you cannot possibly come up with the correct answer. That way, we can confuse you perfectly to believe whatever we want to believe, because we can choose your exit point. That's a psychological game that's as old as Dr. Zeus. As a matter of fact, Dr. Zeus was a CIA operative and the actual equal to the propaganda minister for America in World War II. After World War II, he wrote all these wonderful things showing how to hammer somebody, which is the term, which is green eggs and ham. Half step, again, with the cat in the hat. Okay, these things are psychological tools.
Correct, and that's the point of Common Core. The point of Common Core, as these mathematicians have pointed out, is to completely confuse reality and basic science, and getting back to exactly what you were saying, restructuring and reforming how people think and view the most basic common things.
So, I mean, the structure of how we create that image is more important than the image that we're actually creating if we're going to have an understanding.
Correct. That's right, yes.
Okay. So I can have a blurry image of it and have little understanding, and person that has a clear picture of it then completely is baffled.
There you go. There you go. So this is about wraps up our time for today. As always, it's very good. We will certainly do more of these, but we do appreciate the offer to be on, and we're glad we're able to participate in your putting the truth and putting research and putting ideas out there to try to wake people up.
Well, again, I think that the social experiment is being conducted by people that don't quite understand humans. Otherwise, they would have never had to test the power of love. That's something that they didn't understand. They could be empathetic as you want, but if you've never understood love, how could you actually understand the loss of the pain of it either?
There you go. So thank you very much. Again, it's SIS Systems. We have a Facebook page, SIS Systems. Go check it out. Send us information if you've had an EV, an ET, a UFO experience, direct or indirect. We want to very much interview you. We'd love to hear about it. So please let us know, and please contact us, and we very much look forward to having another conversation with you.
Absolutely. This has been Beware Mouse. Stick around. I want to speak with you just after we hang up here. This has been Beware Mouse. Thank you for tuning in. People, you've been asking for what the leading edge was. This is the leading edge. Maybe next time we get to have a chance in order to discuss what recent events were at the Sunspot Observatory, because I honestly think this is being used as a distraction to introduce UFOs to something that we already know is there, and that is our underground military bases. They had to clear that entranceway in order to get something in and out, and basically bar people from coming in. And we already know that is one of the locations. So go ahead.
Great. Look forward to talking to you soon, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Time for you, sir, and hopefully you do have some feedback on that. If not, we can go ahead and continue our track and global aspects then.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're out of here, and may your God be with you, folks. Have a great day.